What is the relationship between leadership and culture in different development contexts? Why is it important to bring different leadership styles to these contexts? I've worked in a number of developing contexts now. The longest and most intense have been in Western China, the mountains of Lesotho, and remote Indigenous communities in Australia. I would agree that the fundamentals of leadership remain the same in all of these contexts, but that some things remain different. Reflecting on my years of working in rural China, two things come to mind. First, people expected me to be authoritative. I was involved in building hundreds of kilometres of village roads using local labour and contractors. There were lots of people involved: villagers, leaders, officials, technicians. The nature of the work was quite formulaic. We had ambitious targets to meet with limited time and resources. I learned that people responded to me best when I was clear and directive in my instructions. Indeed, my attempts to be more consultative were often met with bemusement and at times annoyance. It seemed that people were actually wondering if I was capable in my role. This was quite challenging for me because Australians prefer a more consultative approach. In my experience of remote Aboriginal communities, people often reject and are hostile towards authority. This occurs not only when exercised by non-Indigenous people like myself, but also by their own community leaders. I've learned to take a much humbler approach. Before I make any suggestions, I build respect and trust, listen carefully to all stakeholders, and only promise what I know I can deliver. So in China, I had to take a more directive approach to leadership than what I was accustomed to. The second thing about China, which took me many years to understand, is what is known there as guanxi. Simply translated, it means relationships, but it actually means a network of mutual obligations. So I do a favour for you, and I expect you to return the favour. This is very different to Australia, where it would be impolite to expect a favour in return. In China, I formed many professional relationships, some of which endure to this day. There were the ubiquitous banquets and bag karaoke. The favours asked of me largely involved logistics and stretching targets, and I became accustomed to very direct requests for these favours. But I could never get used to the idea of asking for favours back in return. I developed significant guanxi with senior figures in the Chinese government who were in a position to secure Chinese government funds needed to finish the roads. Although I was basically owed favours, I was reluctant to ask. It felt wrong, and I was terrified that by playing this game, it might escalate into even more requests from me. Guanxi is the oil that keeps the Chinese system moving, and has been so for many thousands of years. Looking back, I can't help but wonder if my reluctance to participate held the project back. So the fundamentals of leadership remain the same regardless of the context, but there can be cultural factors that impact on how things get done. This is especially so in programs seeking to support human and social development, which by their very nature are intensely interpersonal and intercultural. Turning now to the importance of different styles of leadership and development, I am reminded of when I worked as a district engineer for the government of Lesotho, building water supply systems in mountain villages. I managed a team of 20 staff, mostly technicians and tradesmen. We lived in the same small compound. We worked with hundreds of villagers and a swathe of local leaders and government officials. It was a great job, the most rewarding of my career so far. Reflecting on the 6 leadership styles as defined by Daniel Goleman: coercive, authoritative, affiliative, democratic, pace-setting and coaching, The style I used in Lesotho was mostly democratic, but I used them all. You need to shift styles depending upon the person and the business situation you are dealing with. You can't just rely on one style. Thinking across the diversity of people that I have worked with in development and others that I have observed, I am struck by how different people have different strengths as leaders and how people grow into and move between different styles. Your career might begin as a frontline aid worker, progressing to a technical consultant, then to a manager of an aid agency. You might start out with a participatory democratic style, then develop a more coaching style before gaining the confidence and legitimacy to assume a more authoritative style. We need to understand the leadership styles that suit us best, that bring out our natural strengths. But leadership also demands considerable flexibility and range, and an appetite for learning and change. If we are to practice authentic leadership, we need to adopt a style that suits our nature. But if all we do is focus on being authentic, we can remain locked within our comfort zone. Professor Herminia Ibarra from INSEAD Business School calls this the authenticity paradox. It's true that we need to find the styles that bring out our best, but we also need to stretch outside of our comfort zone by adopting an experimental mindset. Every time I have worked in a team, it has taken on a unique constellation. In order to work with others well, we need to be adaptive. We need to recognise the existing strengths of team members and fill the gaps where weaknesses exist. The best team players I have worked with draw on a range of leadership styles and match them effectively with changing contexts. This capability in leadership is, in my experience, just as important as capability in any technical, methodological, or managerial sense.